Greetings. Thank you for joining me for this week's midweek meditation. Are you a morning person? I like to think of myself as a morning person because when I wake up earlier in the day, I usually have a better perspective on things, and I'm usually more productive earlier in the day than I am later in the day. But I too also have mornings where I'm just not firing on all cylinders. Maybe I'm tired, maybe I didn't get a good night's sleep, but I just wake up with this fog, a mental fog, like the pistons aren't firing correctly. And then there's other times where maybe I wake up and I'm almost over-analyzing, just right out of the gate. As soon as I wake up, my mind is going in all these different directions rather than being focused on what it should be focused on. But there's an ancient solution for either one of these problems. Back in biblical times, they would wake up and recite what they call the Shema. The Shema it comes from a Hebrew word meaning hear, but it's actually taken from the book of Deuteronomy, and it begins with a challenge to hear. And so they would wake up, and first thing in the morning, they would recite this passage. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. Now that might sound familiar to you because we think of that as the greatest commandment. But it goes on. It says, these commands that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. This whole prayer was called the Shema, and it's a reminder to remind yourself of God's love, God's presence, God's law, God's commandments. What would it look like if we woke up in the morning and immediately did something like the Shema? Now, I know that's a long passage to memorize and to say every morning as soon as you get out of bed, but what would it look like if you were intentional? Just right out of the gate, first thing in the morning, saying, everything I do today, I'm going to be looking for God, for God's presence, for God's direction, for God's wisdom. I'm going to be mindful of where I could share God's love. If that became the first thought every morning, if we even came up with a way to recite it, memorize something and say it first thing every morning so that we could focus on that truth and carry it with us throughout the day, I bet it would make a difference in your life just as it makes a difference in my life. And hey, maybe you would even become a morning person.